praise on that one. Incredible job. And I'm excited to get into God's Word with you this morning, amen? Because I just believe that every time the Word of God gets opened, that our lives are going to get changed. Because it says that it will never come back empty. Never. Nothing ever goes to waste when it comes to God's Word. Amen? Amen. You know, today I want to talk to you about a topic that is not commonly talked about in churches. And we're not about being like churches. We're about being like the church in the Bible. Amen? And that topic is being radical. We're going to depart from the self-help messages that are being preached on every block. And we're going to talk about being radical followers of Christ. But before we get into it, I looked up the definition of radical for you. And so we're going to create a platform for what we're going to learn this morning. And it's really broken into three different definitions. The first one is, it's going to the root or origin of something which is not generally taught anymore. So this is kind of funny. It says that you're going back to the root or something. You're going back to the origin, the genesis of it, which has been suppressed for so long. It's not been taught for so long that now it's radical that you revisit it. And this is being a follower, a true follower of Christ. That has been suppressed, it's been watered down, it's been Americanized and made politically correct and westernized. It's been split into so many different things that are not in the scriptures that when we call the world to saying, hey, let's get back to being radical disciples, it's so radical to the world that we live in today. It goes on to the second definition. Favoring drastic political, economic, or social reform. Having extreme political or social views which are not shared by most. I mean, that's being a disciple right there. Is that we are very narrow-minded people. We have a very narrow way of thinking. We actually believe that we want to reform the entire world and call every man and woman to being a follower of Christ. I mean, it's drastic. It's not shared by most. It's few. And it's absolutely radical. And then it goes on. It says, existing inherently in a thing or person. That's interesting. And it reminds me of John 8:31, where Jesus said, if you hold to my teachings, the Greek word for hold there is meno, live in my teachings, then you're really my disciples. And the truth will set you free. And this is what we believe, that here in the San Francisco International Christian Church, we're not trying to call each other to just be religious and come to a weekly meeting, that we expect each other to actually live in the teachings of Jesus, and we're willing to hold each other accountable to such a standard, and it makes it absolutely radical. We come from a radical place with radical teachings. You know, I don't know if you're visiting with us this morning, you know, but this is what we're all about here in this church. We're all about being sold out disciples of Jesus. Radical disciples of Jesus. And collectively together with all of our churches, being a radical movement of God. And that's the title of the lesson I have for you this morning. The radical movement of God. Give you a little bit of a history lesson here, where we kind of come from. And those who don't know is that the real roots of our movement came out of Boston in 1979. And what happened is there was a little church in Lexington that was going to close their doors. As a last resort, they called a guy named Kip McKean and said, hey, the church is going under, come here and please help us. He went there and he preached radical discipleship. There are 60 people in the church. 30 of them said, we don't want to be this committed to God. 30 of them said, we want to do this. We want to actually obey the scriptures. Those became the 30 would-be disciples in the Gimbel's living room. Everybody who comes from our fellowship has heard this story like 1.5 million times. And from those 30 people, just in the little living room in Boston, it wound up being a movement that changed the world. Yeah. I mean, they went from one church and 30 people to almost 400 churches, so around 250,000 disciples in 20 years. Come on, bro. It became the fastest growing church movement in church history, other than the one you read about actually in the Bible in the book of Acts. Wow. I mean, it was incredible. The movement did incredible things. It was amazing. In 1987, they sent a church to Johannesburg, South Africa. Lord willing, would be going back in another year or so. But at the time, there was apartheid in the country that made it illegal for blacks and whites to worship together. People at the time said, hey, meet them where they're at. Have 2 mission teams. Send a white mission team and a black mission team. Hopefully one day they can join forces and be one church there. But don't send one church because that's going to be dangerous. We said, is it going to be dangerous? Absolutely, it's going to be dangerous. But this is the movement of God. And it's radical, and we're going to send one church there. Shortly after landing, the apartheid was lifted. And it became legal for blacks and whites to worship together. It became one of the most powerful churches in the world. In 1991, they sent the church to Moscow. This is right after the wall had come down and the curtain had fallen, and there was a regime change. They were coming out of communism and embracing Westernism. And there was a lot of unrest in the country. And so a lot of the religious groups were fleeing because of it as we were coming in by the hand of God again. Because they weren't there for the people. But we said, again, people were like, don't go there right now. Put it off a year, put it off 2 years. This is not safe. People were calling and saying, hey, my kid's on this mission team, I don't want them to go. They said, hey, they signed up to die for Jesus and he's ready to go. They sent the mission team there. It was about a mission team the size of San Francisco, about 26 disciples. And the first year they had 850 baptisms. They were teaching Seeking God studies to groups like this. Wow. I mean, imagine that. See, God took away all those false teaching groups as the kingdom of God was landing. Come on. See, it was a radical movement that was now starting to gain and build momentum. In the early 80s, there was 1 or 2, 3, 4 plantings a year. By the time I became a disciple in 1999, there was about 30 church plantings a year. They went to places where it was illegal to be a Christian. They had to have names from like Sandstorm 1, Sandstorm 2. Wow. Because it was unlawful to even have a Bible. Wow. That's the impact that was happening, a global impact. Some of the most influential and powerful people of the day were being evangelized and having a chance to hear the true gospel. The U.S. President at the time, Bill Clinton, and even the late, great Nelson Mandela were all invited out to church and had a chance to study the Bible. Wow. I mean, to the highest, most powerful people were being reached for God. Sadly, in 2003, due to idolatry and greed in the hearts of God's people, this radical movement came to a crashing halt. Astonishing most in it. It seemed unstoppable. I remember when I used to go to congregations of thousands and see KNNs, we called it the Kingdom News Network, and seeing these things and seeing 100 baptisms in LA in one service. 100 horse troughs laid out and like dominoes, them going down like this. And it was just, there's no way this can be stopped. Because we started building it for ourselves and not for God, and idolatry and greed got into our hearts, God scattered it all over the world. Just like in Nehemiah 1:8. Come on, dude. People started to care about themselves more than their God. People started worrying about their own houses rather than building the house of the Lord. They started to seek their own lives and careers and their own dreams, rather than the kingdom of God and Jesus' dream to evangelize the nations in a generation.
Come on, Jason, talk about it.
We saw the destruction, and we saw it for years.
Come on, Jason.
Many of us wound up in Babylon, enslavement to the things that we left when we first heard the message. In 2006, after years of trying to call the movement of God back to being a movement of God again, we decided, you know what, you just have to start a new movement all over again.
Wow. Yeah.
Because Jesus said, you cannot put new wine into old wineskin. You're moving both the wine and the wineskin. And after much pain, we said, we've got to just go do it all over again. And we just believed the scriptures that if we would turn back to God, like it said in Nehemiah 1:8, with all of our hearts, then even from the furthest horizon, He would bring us back to the city of God, and we could be His people again. And we just believed that if we would do this, that God would bless it, that the second attempt at world evangelism would be the best because God would reward the quest. In fact, it was not Moses who made it into the promised land. It was on the second try with Joshua that got the job done. In fact, it was not the first covenant, but the second covenant that brought us salvation. And then we could do it again. That was radical. It was radical to take such a stance. To be hated even by people that we love so much. In 2007, 42 would-be disciples moved to Los Angeles with a dream of just rebuilding the burnt and battered walls of the kingdom of God. And in 7 short years, that one church with 42 people has multiplied into 30 churches and over 4,000 disciples in 7 years.
Come on.
Let me tell you, the radical movement of God is doing again, but do you see it? Do you see what God is doing? He's doing it even quicker than in our former fellowship. It's advancing in a more powerful way. But you know what's the most radical thing of all? Staying radical.
Come on. Right. True.
That's the truth. Getting radical for a week, month, even a year, that's easy. But it's always the few who are willing to stay radical for a lifetime. And when they see themselves get off of that track, call themselves back to it, no matter what it takes. See, counting the cost is not something you do once. It's something that God will put you in a position to do many, many times. If you don't believe me, just ask the Oaks and the Zamoras and people that have been around a while. As that God will call you to do it again, again, and again. Because being sold out shouldn't be something that you once did.
Right.
See, glory days in the kingdom are not in the past, they're in the future. And being sold out should be something that you do every day.
Come on.
And we've got to ask ourselves this morning, before our great God, is it the life that I'm living? This morning there are 3 convictions I want to put in your heart. This morning there are 3 convictions that I want to call you to either do if you're being a radical disciple of Jesus, or if you have shied off from that, get your heart back to. Amen?
Amen.
And my first point to you is radical commitments.
Come on,
Dave.
Turn over to Luke 5.
Go, bro. Come on, Dave.
Luke 5 and verse 1. It says, one day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, with the people crowding around him and listening to the word of God, he saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen, who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him, "Put out a little from shore." Then he sat down and taught the people from the boats. When he had finished speaking, he said to them, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." See, Jesus is very tactful. He doesn't ask Peter to go into the deep end until he gets done with the lesson. See, that's how you do it. First you preach God's word, you get everybody's hearts right, then you say, hey guys, now let's go out into the deep end for a catch. Amen? And verse 5 he says, Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I'll let down the nets. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in another boat, come and help them. And they came to fill both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell on his knees and said, Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man. For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. So were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll catch men. Come on. So they pulled their boats up on the shore, left everything, and followed him. What an incredible account of Mark 1. So this is a parallel passage of come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men that we're all very familiar with. And here Jesus, he's teaching the people and he says to Peter, he goes, you know what, Peter, let's just go in the shallow water. See, because that's where people want to listen to Jesus. In the shallow end of Christianity. In the shallow end, they're just listening. But then he says to Peter, you're going to be my guide. You're going to follow me. Let's go into the deep waters. Come on, bro. The deep waters of Christianity. You know, it's something about it is that people love the shallow end. You know, and he says, hey, we're going to go in and we're going to go fishing and we're going to catch a bunch of fish. Right. I think sometimes we can relate to how Peter's feeling here, where he's like, I've been fishing all night, I haven't caught anything. Yeah. You ever felt like that? You know, yeah. I've worked hard, and we've caught nothing. Yeah. Why? I think that probably wasn't usual for him to catch nothing, and that's why he kept going all night, because he's got bills to pay. Yeah. And Jesus, I think, stunted the growth of it. Why? So he could show him a great catch, and that it would produce the catharsis we see in his heart at the end. Right. Then he goes, you know what? Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man. Mm-hmm. See, God can disciple us by his sternness, but what's much more powerful is when he disciples us through his kindness. Yeah. And here he disciples Peter with this kindness, and it changes the man's life. Yeah. You know, I love Jesus that he always waits for when we have something that we really want before he calls us to follow him. Right. And here Peter's been fishing all night and he finally catches a bunch of fish. He's probably, you know, we could take a couple months off. We're going to make some money. We're going to be able, you know, my wife's going to be able to finally get that wall unit that she wants. And we're going to be able to do this. We're going to be able to do these different things. And man, this is awesome. Then he's like, hey, just leave all that, and now you can follow me. Okay. See, God knows what he's doing. Yeah. And he waits for there's that thing in our heart where we don't want to give up. And he says, now you come follow me. Yeah. Peter leaves everything and he follows him. See, there's a motto of every disciple's life. And that's go anywhere, do anything, and give up everything for the gospel. And we've got to ask ourselves, is that your convictions this morning? Is that your heart? Is that your life? Because it's much easier to say that than to actually live that. And what we don't need in the kingdom of God is cheerleaders. We don't need cheerleaders around here. We don't need them. But there's people who just want to be a cheerleader. I just want to be on the sidelines. Like Sarah was a cheerleader when she was in high school. And she'd be like, go anywhere. Do anything. Give up everything. We don't need that here. You're probably asking yourselves why I just did it. And I don't know. We don't need cheerleaders in the kingdom of God. But what we need is people who are actually willing to say, hey, coach, put me in the game. You don't give me the ball and let me run it into the end zone. That's what we need in the kingdom of God. I remember when Tim took over, Tim had like an analogy for everything. And he took over the South region. He says, what we need is running backs. People who are going to, he called it, who remembers? Monster the ball. And he's Canadian, so they don't know about football. So it was like real it was really different for him. He says, I was watching football and he gives it to him, and the guy grabs the ball, he monsters the ball, and he trusts the ball to him.
Right.
I was like, it's football. But it's like, there needs to be people that you can trust that ball to.
Right.
And they're going to grab it and go through that line and get it into the end zone.
Right.
See, that's what we need in the kingdom.
Come on.
Yeah.
We need people who are going to monster the ball.
Yeah.
Give me the study.
Right.
I'll get this person in the waters of baptism. I'll make it happen. See, here, they start to catch some fish. You know, they're like, hey, there's no baptisms in the Bible talk. And he says, go into the deep water. They start to catch some fish. Then they call to the other Bible talk. Come help us with all the studies over here. And then they get all the studies in their Bible talk. They say, hey, we can't handle it all. It's time to start a new Bible talk. You know, I love this scene in the Bible, in the History Channel, the movie. And it's incredible. You know, he gets with Peter in the boat, and Peter's just floored by God's kindness. And he's like, what are we going to do? And Jesus looks at him. He's very handsome in the movie. He looks at him and he goes, we're going to change the world. And you see Peter's just like, oh my gosh. Because he knows that he's going to do it. You know, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
We're here to change the world.
That's right.
It's what we signed up for.
Yeah.
It's a radical commitment to change the world. But radical commitment isn't something that you cheer for on the sidelines of the GLC.
Yeah.
It's not what you do. And Christianity isn't a spectator sport. It's not. It's something that you've got to dive in and get involved in.
Right.
You can't sit on the sidelines of Christianity for very long.
Nope.
You cannot. You go to get a breather, get a little Gatorade, have a quiet time, and get back into the fight. That's what you sit on the sidelines for. But Jesus says here, put out into deep waters. You know, some of us, we want to stay in ankle-deep commitment of Christianity. You know, you can touch the bottom. It's safe there. You're in control of your life.
Right.
You feel secure. You feel good. It's relaxing. It's nice. You get a little bit of water, so you feel the water line. It's not like I'm on the beach getting a suntan. I am in the water. But you're unwilling to go into the deep end. See, the deep end's a little scarier. You got to keep your head above the water. Not quite sure what's going to happen. But man, I'm willing to go wherever God wants me to go. I want to be in the deep end. What does God want for my life? Yeah, I remember they preached this at the ICCM one time. And Tim goes, you know, going into the deep end of Christianity, that doesn't even get you an ICCM t-shirt. We expect you to be willing to go into the deep end.
Right.
What gets you an ICCM t-shirt is that you're willing to call the person next to you to come with you in.
Right.
And some of us, we need to make a decision this morning to get out of the shallow end of Christianity.
Come on, bro.
To let go and to go into the deep end of Christianity. And some of us who are wading in that deep water, we need to call the people next to us to come with us in there. Amen?
Amen.
Let's make a decision this morning, because you know what? I love water parks. It's very important to what I'm about to say. But I love water parks. I don't really care for amusement parks that much because roller coasters give me a headache. I don't know if that happens when you just get older. You know, I mean, older, I mean, over 25. It's hard. But when I was moving to Portland from Florida, I had seen this water park on the Travel Channel called Schlitterbahn. It's in Texas, and I had to go to it. And you know, there's two types of people at the water park. There are those who like the lazy river, and those who like the wave pool. And you know what? I found that they're the same type of people in the church. Those who like the lazy river, where you can touch bottom, it's nice, the kids can come with you, you're on your floaty. It's a beautiful thing?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that floaty is the faith of your discipler. Some of you guys are like, that's cold. He ain't right. And he ain't wrong. And there's the people who like the wave pool. You go into the wave pool, it seems like there's a storm on it, though there's no storm. Choppy. You gotta keep your head above the water. Sarah and I went one time, I had to throw off the raft so I could get on it. I'm scared. I gotta make it to the end. There's some people who like the wave pool. You know what I love about Schlitterbahn is that the lazy river was actually a figure eight.
Oh, yeah.
And one side of the figure eight had the wave pool that developed a tidal wave that went around that side.
Yeah.
Now that was radical.
Right.
And so you had no choice. You had to get into the wave pool.
Nice.
You know, what kind of person are you? Are you in the lazy river or are you in the wave pool? Because here's the thing. It's only in the deep water where you catch fish. You ever notice that? Have you ever seen an advertisement for shallow end fishing? It doesn't exist. But there is one called deep sea fishing.
Yeah.
Why? Because that's where you catch a marlin.
Yeah.
You don't catch nothing in the shallow end. That's where the kids play with their toys. But you have to go into the deep water. You got to go into the deep water if you want to catch fish. So let's do the math. If there's no baptisms in the church, what does that tell us? There's a lot of disciples in the church who are really relaxed in the shallow end of Christianity. That's what my Bible says to me. Because when you go into the deep waters, you might get too many fish. You might have to call for another boat to come help you out. We might have to send people, hey, Portland, we need you to send down some people down here. We've just caught too many fish in San Francisco. See, but it's not until each one of us makes a decision that we're going to get out of the shallow end and go into the deep end of radical commitment that we are going to see an amazing amount of fish caught. I'm going to call you as your brother to make that decision this morning, amen? Amen. My point number 2 for you is a radical reality. Turn to Luke 4 and verse 14.
Come on, Jason.
It says, Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit. And the good news about him spread throughout the whole countryside. He taught in their synagogues, and everyone praised him. He went to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue as was his custom. He stood up to read. The scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor.
Come on.
He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. And he began by saying to them, "Today, the scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." What an incredible scene. I like to think of this scene like Clint Eastwood in a Western. And so Jesus, he comes into the saloon, the synagogue, and he kicks it open like this. He goes, "Hey, you, bring me that." He gets the scroll, something that looks like this, got 2 levers. He gets it to Isaiah 61, and then he reads it. And he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, and he's anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, and recovery of sight for the blind, and to release the oppressed. And I'm going to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor."
Come on, bro.
And he says, "You, take this." And he sits down. See, he preached sitting down in those days. And everyone's just like, what the heck just happened? See, they knew who he was saying, guys, Isaiah was talking about me. I'm here now.
That's hot.
See, Jesus came to earth in one-man mission team.
Yeah.
His mission field was earth.
Come on, JC.
It was hard. He got the job. Imagine if they just sent Ryan to San Francisco. That's right. Hey, who's going to San Francisco on mission team? Ryan. That's who's going. He's going to get the job done.
Nice.
The guy came one man.
Wow.
And the reason why he got the job done is because he walked in a radical reality. He saw the world the way it truly is. And he tells us here, he sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners. See, Jesus came a freedom fighter, ready to give his life to end the bondage, the worst bondage the world has ever known. And that's the slavery Satan has inflicted on the human race since almost the dawn of time.
Come on, bro.
It's a slavery that you can't see, a slavery of the mind.
Yep.
But it's as real as we're standing here today.
Yeah.
This is the way Jesus saw the world. In Ephesians 2, it says, hey, you were dead in your transgressions and sins when you used to live, when you followed the ways of the ruler of the kingdom of the air. That's Satan, and this is his world. And he runs the show down here. And Jesus saw what he was getting into, and it allowed him to have the impact that he needed to make. We live in a world that is enslaved.
Yeah.
Not like a little bit, all the way.
Yeah.
So much to where we're blinded to even what it is.
Yeah.
It's a slavery of our minds. And it's a spiritual slavery that's been inflicted for thousands and thousands of years.
Oh, JC.
Who's ever heard of a man by the name of Willie Lynch? This guy was a horrible slave plantation owner in the 1700s. And he wrote a letter which is known as the infamous Willie Lynch letter. And it was a letter that he wrote to his fellow slave plantation owners on how to properly break a man and woman and turn them into good slaves that'll produce good economy for hundreds of years.
Wow.
And if you look at this plan that he puts forth, it's about a 5-point plan. It's exactly what Satan has done to our world.
Yeah.
He says the first thing you do, and this is shocking, he says the first thing you do is you take their history away from them. You take away their history of the motherland. And he says whatever you got to do, take their possessions, whatever it is, take it away from them. And that's what Satan has done to us. Like there's a Bible in most homes, it's in every hotel room. There's people meeting in congregations all over the city today. But we're a society that has lost the history of the Bible. Most people think it's a book of stories and tales. They don't really know. They don't know that this is actually a historical document. It's very verifiable. It's secular literature from the time, and there's all types of archaeological artifacts all over the world that already confirm and prove Bible stories. We've lost our history of our people. See, when I became a disciple, this became a record of my ancestry. And we've lost that. Satan has stolen it. And then after that, he says, take their language from them. Only let them speak English. And now we have 41,000 different languages of Christianity, but we've lost the sound language of discipleship. We've lost our language. People don't even know how to speak it. You know when you're with a disciple, because they speak a language. You go, that's a disciple. You know when you're not with one, you go, that's not one. He's not speaking the language.
Right.
He would know this. He would say that. When I said this, he would say that if he was a disciple.
Right.
You know that immediately. Satan has stolen that from the lost world. And this is the most shocking. He says, after you've done that, destroy the family. He says, and how you do this, it's all about the woman. He says, you take the woman, and in her presence, you whip one man to death, you burn another, and the third you draw a quarter. So you rip them apart. And it says, when she sees the male image destroyed in her presence, she'll become frozen in a state of independent fear. And he says, and what will happen in return is she'll raise her children oppositely. She'll raise her daughters to be young and independent like her. And my sisters, let's be honest, what our parents tell us, many of them, you be independent. What did Beyonce sing to us? Miss Independence. We've been singing this theme song for our whole lives. No man's going to rule over me. I'm going to do my thing. I got to get it my way. No one's going to look after me but me. This has been ingrained in us. And he says that's how she'll raise her daughters. Because she no longer trusts a man. She can no longer count on him to protect her. So she's got to be independent. And she's going to train her daughters to be the same way. And also, she'll raise her sons to be dependent, to be weak-minded and strong-backed.
Wow.
And sadly, that's where our youth is at today.
Yeah. Wow.
I spent time on many campuses asking 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old men, hey, you ever thought about God? No. And you know what I believe? I believe that they've managed to make it 20, 21, 22 years without ever asking some of the most fundamental questions of existence. Why am I here? Is there a God? And what is His plan for my life? That they've had their heads so buried in sitcoms, in video games, and in impurity that they never come up to ask a single question about their existence. This is the slavery that Satan has put on us. And it's very real. It's happening. And let me tell you what, we've all felt it.
Right.
None of us are unscathed from this. There's something in me that wants to bury my head in the sand. There's something in me that just wants to check out. You know, and the woman has seen men turn into Al Bundy, right? Where they're just turning like this. Yeah, Marge. You know, just totally checked out of life. That she's frozen in a state of independent fear. I can't trust that. Look at him.
Right.
Look at him. It's been destroyed.
Right.
He's saying it's destroyed the male image. So it's the woman at church on Sunday with the kids. He's home watching another episode of Married with Children. And this is what we've seen happen. And let me tell you what, it's bondage. It's bondage that we need to wake up and see the world that we live in. See the reality. The radical reality of the spiritual war that's happening in this room and everywhere you see outside of it. Only then can we be the radical movement that's going to change the world. Only then can we have an impact like Jesus had here. And Jesus said, anyone who has faith in me will do even greater things than I've done.
Right.
We've got to see the world the way Jesus saw it. And many of us don't see it that way. We're still caught up in what this world tells us we should be caught up in. Career, cars, this, that, white picket fence, all these lies that have been fed to you your whole lives. And we've got to go, you know what? That stuff's awesome. It has a place. But my life's about this. And this is my only ambition in life. This is what I want to see happen. We got to see the world like in Matthew 9. Turn over there. Are you guys with me this morning?
Come on, Jason.
Matthew 9, verse 35. It says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into the harvest field. He called his disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and heal every disease and sickness. And then he just sends them on out. Here's the fastest answered prayer in Bible history. He calls those guys to him. He says, guys, here's the thing. We need workers. He says, all right, well, what should we do? He goes, why don't you guys just pray for it? They go, okay, well, that sounds easy enough. They go and pray. And he goes, hey, guys, come back over here. Hey, good news. God answered the prayer. Really? Where are the workers? Go. Get out of here. Oh, wait. Leave that money. Leave that bag and don't take that to me. This ain't going to be easy. Just going out. See, Here Jesus looks at the world, and he says it's completely harassed in slavery.
Right.
And he has compassion on them. I remember when we first started going to, preparing going to Las Vegas, I was doing a lesson one night for Vegas nights, and I found this thing called the Vegas nerve.
Right.
Which is really cool because it's called the Vegas nerve. I'm about to go to Vegas. Do you get that? And it's actually the largest carnal nerve in the body. It goes from your head and it goes all the way down and wraps around your heart. And I was watching this documentary that's talking about it, and it starts talking about the Vegas nerve. And he says, this is what the Vegas nerve does. And it shows this scene of a man coming back from war in Afghanistan, and he surprises his maybe 5 or 6 year old little boy in his classroom. And so the little boy's coloring, he turns and he sees his dad, and he immediately just starts to weep and just runs to his dad and hugs him, and his dad holds him there, and the boy's just sobbing in his arms. And while you're watching this, what you see start to happen is your eyes start to tear up, you get a knot in your throat, and your chest wells up. That's the Vegas nerve. That God has actually genetically wired us to feel what others feel. To care. To go, man, to look at that little boy, I feel his pain. I feel the fear he had that he'd never see his dad again. And when he hugged him, I shared in that experience. And here Jesus is looking at the slavery of the world, and he's sharing in the experience. He's going, man, these people are harassed, and they're helpless. And he goes, here's the solution. Here's the only solution. Disciples, go. That's the only solution for the world's problems.
Right.
The cure for cancer is not what the world needs. You know, a better economy is not the answer. The only answer Jesus has is a church of sold-out disciples.
Right.
That's the only answer for a lost world. It's the only way that we can see a world of peace. I mean, imagine if, like, actually a substantial part of the population was disciples. My gosh. I mean, right now we're like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent, something like that. Like, imagine if we actually had a substantial part of the population disciples of Jesus. All the problems would, for the most part, be solved.
Right.
If this is the only solution, you know, sadly, in America alone, 38,000 people are commit suicide each year. It's about 105 a day. That's 105 people today that found life in slavery to be so oppressive, so harassing. They said, you know, the only idea is to just end it all. You know, who heard about the Santa Barbara shootings? Happened maybe a couple months ago. This poor guy, who watched the YouTube video of the guy before he went and shot everybody. This poor guy was so harassed by this world that he found the only thing to possibly do is to go and shoot a bunch of girls who rejected him, and then shoot himself. That's Satan's hope for every one of us. That's what he's working for. That's the reality, the spiritual reality of the world that we live in. And the only way we can have the impact that Jesus wants us to have is if we're willing to have the guts to see the world the way Jesus saw it.
Right.
And have the conviction to do whatever it takes to save it. Jesus, there was no bounds he was willing to go. How far are you willing to go to see the world evangelized into your day? See, in our form of fellowship, there were no bounds. You know, when they planted Moscow, Andy Fleming spent $100,000 of his own money to plant the church.
Come on, bro.
Because that's how much he believed in what they were doing. And he knew the only hope for Moscow was that we get there. Is that the heart we still have? Are we willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done because we see the radical reality that we live in? My third point for you this morning is push to radical.
Come on, bro.
You might be saying, all right, I'm super convicted and I need to get radical commitments. And I need to live in the radical reality that the Bible says we're in.
Yes.
But I'm not there.
Come on, bro.
That's okay. That's all right. As long as you're willing to get pushed.
Come on, bro.
See, a lot of people don't like to be pushed. Don't push me around. We just think that, pressure and church should not mix. Right? It should just be, it's like, some people look at the church, they see an army. Some people look at it and see a family. And what we saw happen in our former fellowship is we said, no more army. Army herded people. No more of that. We're just going to be the family.
Amen.
We're going to have food, fun, and fellowship. Every meeting is going to be so awesome that the kids are just going to want to come to dinner. But we're not going to call people to accountability. We're not going to have structure and order. Discipleship's here if you want it, but hey, hands off. Let's forget about Hebrews 3:12 where it says, seek to it, brothers, that no one has a sinful, unbelieving heart to turn away from the living God. That's a heck of a lot of responsibility to put on every single person in the church right there. But we're just going to embrace the family.
Come on, bro.
The truth is, we're both.
Yeah.
We're a family that fights.
Yeah, that's right.
We're here, we're cooking, and we in one hand with a pan, sauteing things for the kids, and we got a sword in the other. That's where we're at. That's the reality of what we're supposed to be a part of. Is that we're a family that's in a war. And like in the day of Nehemiah, he said, put them together by family in parts of the wall. Because here's the thing. A hired soldier, 10 hired soldiers is worth one man defending his family.
Right.
And that's what we're here. I'm here to fight for every single one of you.
Right. Come on, Jason.
I didn't choose you to be my family. And you didn't choose me. But when I got baptized, I became your brother, and you became my sister. And that's just the way it went on down. And now we've got to fight for one another. We've got to be willing to get pushed.
Right.
It's part of Christianity.
Come on, bro.
You must be willing to get pushed.
That's right.
A lot of us, we've grown up in what I call the cult of the individual.
Right.
We have so much individualism. We grew up with, songs and movies and things that taught us all types of things. Like, you got to follow your heart. Be true to yourself. Nobody knows you except you. Nobody can tell you nothing. What's true to you is true to you, and that just be it.
Okay.
We grew up with wonderful songs like Bobby Brown's My Prerogative. It's like, nobody can tell me what to do. It's my prerogative. And we all said, yeah! Nobody can tell me what to do. And we're doing the MC Hammer and stuff. To my prerogative. And we bought in.
Right.
And we bought into the slavery. That, hey, nobody can tell me what to do. But here's the thing. As disciples, if you don't give authority and sway to people in your life, you'll never grow spiritually. If you're always in a constant state, you don't know my life, you don't know my situation, it's my prerogative, nobody can tell me what to do, because when you do, I'm coming for you. When you live in there, you're never going to grow spiritually like that.
Right.
You have to have enough faith in God to give authority to the people in your life.
Come on.
This is what we believe.
Right.
We are part of a theocracy. We're not in a democracy anymore in the kingdom. When you got baptized, you entered a new form of government called the theocracy, where we believe that God leads our movements, and He has given authority to God's leaders, and we totally surrender to that. And we just trust that they're going to take care of us and that God's going to work even when things go wrong. A lot of times people go, hey, with the new movement, what's going to be different? Not much. People are going to be hurt, yes. People are going to make mistakes, yep. Things are going to be done wrong, absolutely. But here's the difference. we're going to repent,
Right.
and we're going to forgive.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Is that we're actually going to repent, and we're actually going to forgive when people hurt us. You know, God likes it this way.
Right.
He likes when we have to wrestle to forgive our brothers and sisters.
Right. Yep.
Why? Because Jesus forgave all of us. It teaches us the heart of God. He doesn't want it to be a perfect situation that's comfortable. He wants us to learn how to forgive and love one another. This is the way He wants it to be. And we've got to just understand that at some point I'm going to hurt you guys, if I haven't already. You might be hurt by some of the things I said this morning. That's okay. It's all right. You can forgive me. And we can learn to forgive and love one another. And our love for each other is going to cover a multitude of sins. Here's the thing, is that you got to have a critical eye as disciples. Because we're looking for sin. We're judging the thoughts and attitudes of the heart.
Right.
And sometimes that critical eye can drift down and become a critical eye. Where you get cynical and untrusting.
Right.
And a lot of us come out of the world where we didn't trust anybody.
Right.
I remember with Tim, and I had a pivotal tea time with him where he said, bro, you've got to trust me. And he said it in a way where I really believed him. I understood. And what I was struggling with trusting with was my relationship with Sarah. And I just felt like, I don't know, she's going to go to London, and what if she likes some brother there, and it doesn't work out, and it doesn't happen. And I just had to trust him. And I'll never forget, you know, at our wedding, when Tim did the toast, and he goes, you know, hey, all of this started on our couch. On the couch, and we just started talking about how we were going to make this happen, and we put creative Facebook posts up there, and Sarah would surely see, like, me strumming the guitar and singing the kids and stuff. Not right. All these different things. I knew she'd see in London and whatnot. And then he goes, bro, you remember all that? And he goes, hey, bro, we did it. And you know what? And what it taught me is I had so much cynicism and lack of trust in my heart. I was wrestling. Was he trying to hold me back? Does he really know my heart and my desire? When I just finally said, here, bro. He made it happen for me.
Come on, bro.
He helped me so much. Are you holding back? Are you willing to let the person in your life just push you?
Come on.
Go, hey, here, bro. I don't want you to just assume it. I trust you. Here's my life.
Right.
Here's what's really going on in my heart.
Come on, bro. Preach about it, bro.
Disciple me. Help me.
Yep.
Some of us, we have lines to our Christianity say, I want to go this far and no further. See, God can't use somebody like that.
Right.
There's got to be no lines to your Christianity. There's not a stopping place of my ministry.
Right.
We just keep going. When we get hurt, we just forgive and keep going. It never ends. Look over here at Mark 6. Let's see what Jesus is doing here.
Come on, Danny.
Come on, bro.
Mark 6.
Breathe, bro.
Come on, bro, it's fire.
How does Jesus get his ministry going? Mark 6, verse 1, it says, Jesus left there and went to his hometown accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath day came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Where does this man get these things, they asked. What is this wisdom that has been given to him, that he does miracles? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son? And the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters with us? And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, only in his hometown, among his relatives, in his own house, is a prophet without honor. He could not do any miracles there, except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their lack of faith. Man, that stinks. That's their worst accreditation in the scriptures, is you actually amazed God at your lack of faith. I mean, that's rough. Then here's the thing. He's not just talking about the people in his hometown. If you read where it says, and he was accompanied by his disciples, that he was amazed at their lack of faith too. Because up to this point, he was just Jesus, the miracle doer, the guy who's the Son of God, and now they're getting to meet his mom. who's probably shared maybe a couple embarrassing stories about him. And they're meeting his brothers and his sisters who don't even believe in him themselves. And maybe they're starting to doubt. You know, you start to learn a lot about people when you get around their family.
Right.
Maybe let me tell you a story about this. When he was in 6th grade, let me tell you this. And so now they're starting to doubt the Lord here. And Jesus can't do any miracles. But what does Jesus do? Did he say, you know what? Let's just go into damage control mode here. Let's just try and sustain. Let's get defensive. Is that what he does?
No.
Let's take a look.
Come on, bro.
Continue on later part of verse 6. It says, then Jesus went around teaching from village to village, calling the 12 to him. He sent them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over spirits. So he says, here's the thing. Everyone's doubting me. We can't do any miracles. All right, guys, I got an idea. 6 mission teams. Let's do 6 mission teams here. You. All you guys, go. This is how we're going to handle it. And they go out. What happens next? His cousin dies. Does he lose heart there? No. Let's look over here later in verse 30.
Come on, bitch.
They come back from the mission teams. In verse 30 it says, the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So they went away by themselves into a boat in a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw the large crowds, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said. It's already very late. Send the people away so they go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, you give them something to eat. They said to him, that would take 8 months of a man's wages. Are we going to spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do we have, he asked. Go and see. Then they found and they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and 50s, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples except for the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They ate and were satisfied. Then the disciples picked up the 12 baskets of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was about 5,000. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of them to Bethesda while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up onto the mountainside to pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was on land alone. He saw his disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. About the 4th watch of the night, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought, he is a ghost, he cried out. Because they saw him, were terrified. Immediately, he spoke to them and said, take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. Then he climbed to the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. What is Jesus doing to his guys here? He's pushing them.
Come on, bro.
He just wants to see how fast the Ferrari goes.
Right.
And so here he sends them out 2 by 2. He challenges them, take no money, no nothing. He makes it challenging for them. They come back, they immediately start to report to him all that's happening. He goes, all right, you guys are exhausted. Let's get some rest. But then when their soul's on the line, there's no time for rest.
Right.
Come on, bro.
They're like, hey, let's just send these people away. It's time to eat. It's late. We've heard enough sermon. We've heard enough of these things. We've done enough. It's time to chill and take it easy. He says, you give them something to eat. I imagine they already had like their food ready to go. Right? What? You give them something to eat. And then he plays, restaurant with these guys. He says, first, you guys are the hostess. Mason's the hostess. So he knows what that's like. A host. Sorry. He says, you guys have them sit in groups of hundreds and 50s. 5,000 people. That's a lot of work.
Right.
And then he says, now you're the waiter. Go and serve everybody the food.
Right.
I can just imagine them struggling
Yeah, right.
as they're doing this. Oh my Sick and tired. Here. Here. And then he says, hey guys, can you guys go pick up all the food? And
Come on, bro.
Why don't you guys do the busing at the tables as well? Oh my gosh. See, everyone's like red-faced. And then he goes, guys, get in the boat! What? Why? Get in! Okay! Gets in the boat. Guys, go on the lake. I'm going to be up over here having a quiet time. And then you know Jesus sends this storm on the lake. They're like 4 Jesus, like, I imagine that he was trying to get to the other side so after like by 8 o'clock in the morning, and he's like, guys, what's been going on? They see him, they're terrified. He gets in the boat, the storm dies down, and it says their hearts were hardened. Because they didn't understand why he was doing what he's doing to them. He was pushing them to becoming the radical disciples that it was going to take to get the job done. Are you willing to get pushed?
Come on, bro.
Come on, bro.
Some of us were so scared
Right.
to get pushed. We're so scared of what may lay hold in our future. We're holding on. You know, there's a saying, you're holding on for dear life. You ever heard of this?
Yeah.
Hold on for dear life. What this tells us is that your life is so dear to you that you need to hold on with everything that you got.
Wow.
And that's where some of us are. We're holding on to our lives so dearly because we're so scared.
Right.
Our lives mean so much to us. We love our lives so much that we're unwilling to just let go.
Right.
Are you holding on for dear life this morning? Or are you willing to just let go and trust God? You remember when he became a disciple? And he just let go? How freeing it was?
Yeah.
He said, okay, God's plan is better than mine. Let's go. I don't know what's going to happen. But what happens is we throw ourselves on that, and then we quickly start to take hold again.
Right.
We run out of that deep end into the shallow, and we go, I feel safe again. Okay, it's okay here. Are you holding on? Do you love your life that much? Turn over to Revelation 12.
Come on, bro. Come on.
Here, the Apostle John, he gives us the definition of what it's going to take to make it to the end. Revelation 12 and verse 10. It says, Then I heard a loud voice in heaven, Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers who accuses them before God day and night has been hurled down. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink back from death. Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. See, this is how they made it. This is how they overcame the slavery that we talked about. Is that they didn't love their life that much to shrink back from death. Do you love your life too much to shrink back from death? Because Jesus said, unless you're willing to die, you can't live.
Right.
Are you willing to die so that you can really be used by God in a powerful way? You know, it's great when you die. It's really actually very freeing and wonderful. You just go, there's nothing I'm holding on to anymore. Here you go. You know, for me, when I got restored, I finally hit that point. Like it says in Peter, it says, He who suffered in his body is do away with sin. As a result, he does not live the rest of his life for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God.
Right.
Sadly, for most of us, to get to the point where we let go, a lot of times we have to go through an enormous amount of pain.
Right.
I'm one of those people. We have to go through the school of hard knocks before we finally just go, you know what? This life really isn't that awesome. Even when you get what you want. Even when you get all the stuff that you want, what you're going to find out that it really isn't what's going to make you happy anyways. That what makes you happy is that when you're just letting go and walking with God.
Yeah.
When you're just giving everything over. And I had to go through so much pain before I hit that bottom where I just said, you know, I'm done. All this stuff that I never did as a lukewarm Christian, I'm going to do. That's what I told myself 4 years ago last May. I said all this stuff that I shrank back from, all the fear that I didn't surrender, I'm just going to give it all up. I'm going to do everything. And God has worked in a powerful way.
Amen.
Are you still holding on this morning? Let go. Let go. Stop holding on for dear life. Let's close out here in Colossians 1.
Come on, bro. You're doing an awesome job, bro.
You have to be pushed to radical. None of us are naturally that way.
Come on, bro.
You have to allow yourself to be pushed to let go and to let God. In Colossians 1, verse 3, it says, "We always thank God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, when we pray for you, because we have heard of your faith in Christ Jesus and the love you have had for all the saints, the faith and the love that sprang from the hope that is stored up for you in heaven, and that you have already heard about in the word of truth, the gospel that has come to you. All over the world, this gospel is bearing fruit and growing, just as it has been doing among you since the day you heard it and understood God's grace and all of its truth." Yeah, I know for myself, this is what happened when I studied the Bible. I heard the gospel of God's grace and all of its truth, and it produced a great faith, hope, and love in my heart, and it changed everything in my life. And I know that's the same thing for each one of you. You know, just like it happened to me, it's happened to you for those of you who are disciples. But now this is a message about being radical, amen?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be a radical message if I didn't give you a radical challenge.
Come on, bro. Do it.
And I want to challenge you. If you feel like you've stopped living the life of a radical disciple that we've seen in the scriptures this morning, I want to call you, write a letter to God. And really trace it back to when you stopped doing that.
Come on, bro.
And go, when did I just stop? When did I let the fear? When did I let the bitterness? When did I let it in? And wrote how you got to where you're at in the most vulnerable way. And then I want you to share it with your disciple.
Amen.
Get it out. Say, you know what, this happened. And I think at that point, I stopped.
Bro, that's a great challenge.
And then I allowed this, and this is where I'm at. Get it open with the disciples.
That's awesome, bro.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm encouraged, but I feel like I'm really trying to do this with all my heart. I'm pretty messed up, but I'm really working hard for the Lord here. Amen. I want to challenge you to go to the person in your Bible talk, the person you disciple, or the person in this church that you know is not doing it. And in love, embrace Hebrews 13 where it says, "See to it that no one has a sinful and unbelieving heart." And say, "Hey, I love you, you're awesome, you're incredible. How'd you feel about the lesson this morning?" "I felt like this, and this, and this." You go, "Yeah, how can I help you? How can I encourage you? How can I help you get the joy of your salvation back and being a radical disciple of Jesus?" Amen. You know, here it says, all over the world, this gospel is bearing fruit and growing just like it has been doing since the day we heard it. And I'm here to tell you that all over the world it is happening again. You know, I watched this documentary called I Am, and it's about this guy who thought he was going to die, and he hires a film crew to basically answer a couple fundamental questions. What is wrong with the world, and how do you fix it? Wow. And after going all over the world, he comes to the conclusion the only way to change the world is through a movement.
Wow.
And if we look at it, anytime there's been significant change in our history as a people, it's been through the backs of a movement.
Come on now.
The abolition movement freed the slaves, equal rights movement gave equal rights to women, civil rights gave equal rights to African Americans. And a movement can start with one person. But that person has to be absolutely radical and willing to die for the message. And he could call the person next to him and across from him to be the same radical commitment that they have. They can start a movement that can change the world. The only hope for this world is a movement of God. And if we are going to be the movement of God, we've got to have the radical commitment of our Lord.
Amen.
We've got to see the world in the radical reality that He saw it in, and we've got to allow ourselves to be pushed to radical. If we do this, we will be a movement of God that will change this world. Thank you guys very much.